Michael Rodriguez stood at his father's grave, clutching the West Point Academy application that would never be completed. Staff Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez had died in Afghanistan 6 months ago, taking with him the dream he'd shared with his son since childhood, seeing Michael become an officer in the United States Army. "I can't do it without you, Dad," Michael whispered to the headstone. At 18, he was brilliant enough for West Point, but his mother Maria was struggling to keep their small apartment while working 2 jobs. His father's military benefits helped, but college seemed impossible now, let alone the prestigious military academy. Michael had promised his dying father he would pursue his commission, but reality was crushing that dream. His family needed him to work, not study. The application deadline was in 2 weeks, and he still needed letters of recommendation, test scores, and most importantly, the confidence that had died with his father. Back home, Maria found Michael staring at his father's military photos. "Mijo, your father would want you to try," she said softly. "He always said you were meant for greatness." But Michael shook his head. "Mom, we can't afford the prep courses, the tutoring, nothing. Dad was going to help me with everything." That night, Michael sat at his father's old desk and opened his laptop. His father had always talked about writing to leaders when soldiers needed help. With trembling fingers, he began typing. "Dear President Trump, my name is Michael Rodriguez. My father died fighting for our country, and I can't fulfill the promise I made to him." He wrote about his father's sacrifice, his own dreams of military service, and the impossible financial barriers standing in his way. "Sir, my dad always said America doesn't abandon its own. I'm hoping he was right." Michael attached his father's Purple Heart citation and hit send, knowing it was probably hopeless, but needing to try one last time for the man who had given everything for his family and country. 3 days later, Michael's phone rang while he was stocking shelves at the grocery store where he worked after school. The caller ID showed a Washington, D.C. number he didn't recognize. "Michael Rodriguez? This is Jennifer Walsh from the White House. President Trump received your email about your father and your West Point aspirations." Michael nearly dropped his phone. This had to be a prank. "Sir, I mean ma'am, are you serious?" Jennifer's voice was warm and professional. "Very serious, Michael. The president was deeply moved by your father's sacrifice and your dedication to honoring his memory. He'd like to help you achieve your goal." Within 24 hours, Michael's world transformed completely. The White House connected him with a retired general who offered free tutoring. A prestigious prep school provided a full scholarship for intensive military academy preparation. Most importantly, President Trump personally wrote one of his letters of recommendation. "Michael," Trump said during a phone call that left the teenager speechless, "your father died serving our nation with honor. The least we can do is help his son serve with that same honor. You have my full support, and I expect great things from you." The letter Trump wrote was powerful and personal. "Michael Rodriguez represents the very best of American military families. His father's sacrifice demands our support for his son's dreams. I recommend him without reservation for admission to West Point." With Trump's endorsement, Michael's application went from long shot to frontrunner overnight. As the application deadline approached, Michael felt his father's presence more strongly than ever. He was no longer just applying to college. He was fulfilling a sacred promise to a fallen hero, with help from the commander-in-chief himself. 6 months later, Michael stood in his dress uniform at West Point's acceptance ceremony, his mother Maria beside him with tears streaming down her cheeks. The letter of acceptance had arrived with a personal note. "Congratulations, Cadet Rodriguez. Your father would be proud. President Trump." The journey to this moment had been grueling. Months of intensive preparation, physical training, and academic work that pushed Michael beyond limits he didn't know he had. But every challenge reminded him of his father's stories about military discipline and the honor of service. Trump had personally followed Michael's progress, checking in monthly through phone calls that motivated the young man to excel. "Remember, Michael," Trump had said during one call, "you're not just representing yourself or even your family. You're representing every military family that has sacrificed for this country." The night before reporting to West Point, Michael visited his father's grave one final time as a civilian. "I did it, Dad. I kept my promise." He placed his acceptance letter on the headstone, alongside the photo of him in his cadet uniform that Trump had personally signed. At the academy, Michael's story became legendary among his classmates. The cadet whose father died in service, whose dreams were saved by a presidential intervention, who carried the honor of military families on his shoulders. His roommate, the son of a general, admitted, "I've had every advantage, but you've earned this more than anyone." Michael's academic performance was exceptional, but it was his leadership and dedication to his fellow cadets that truly honored his father's memory. He established a support group for cadets from military families, ensuring no one faced the challenges of academy life alone. For years later, Second Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez stood at attention as President Trump personally administered his oath of office. The same man who had believed in an 18-year-old's impossible dream was now commissioning him as an officer in the United States Army. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," Trump said after the ceremony, "your father is watching this moment with tremendous pride. You've not only fulfilled your promise to him, you've exceeded every expectation." Michael's mother, Maria, now wearing a proud smile instead of tears of struggle, watched her son achieve the dream that had seemed impossible just years before. Michael's West Point graduation speech had moved the entire academy. "For years ago, I thought my father's death had ended our shared dream. But I learned that in America, fallen heroes' dreams don't die. They inspire others to help make them reality. President Trump didn't just help me get into West Point. He taught me that leadership means lifting others when they can't lift themselves." The newly commissioned lieutenant was assigned to the same unit his father had served with in Afghanistan, completing a circle that began with tragedy but ended with triumph. His first act as an officer was to establish a scholarship fund for children of fallen soldiers, ensuring other military families would have the support he had received. As Michael prepared for his first deployment, he carried two photos in his uniform pocket, one of his father in combat gear, and one of himself with President Trump at his commissioning ceremony. The promise made at a graveside had been kept, but more importantly, it had been transformed into a legacy of service that would honor his father's sacrifice for generations to come. The boy who had lost his hero had become a hero himself, proving that with support, determination, and belief in American values, even the most impossible dreams can come true.